So your name is DJ
Byrnes.
DJ Byrnes.
Byrnes.
And you've been doing the Rooster thing for a couple years now?
I've been doing the Rooster since 2019.
And why? How did it come about?
I ran against Jenna Powell out in MAGA country in the 80th district.
Jenna Powell.
Yeah, we got her living we caught her living 75 miles outside the district.
I filed a board of election thing on her, and it got covered up. I don't know if you knew that. I filed a board of election complaint on her voter registration. But go ahead.
So I was working 11 Warriors, and I was just at this time where I was like, how can I kill my boss and put him in a barrel of acid and never have to speak to him again? Not a healthy place to be.
Yeah.
So we had an opportunity. A guy dropped out who would have been a much better candidate. I had no roots in the area.
Okay.
But it was me and this other guy. I wrote this letter why I wanted to go for it. Got into it because it was the year where the House Democrats wanted to challenge all 99 districts.
Okay.
So I was the 99th guy through the range. Ran against Jenna. It was an open seat. Getting into it, I knew I was going to lose, but I don't do anything in moderation, for better or worse.
Okay.
And if you're going out and you're asking people for money, if you're asking for their vote, I'm not going to sit here, I'm not going to you have to delude yourself into thinking, well, I might have a chance. Didn't have a chance. And so the plan was just to be.
You ran as a Democrat, not an independent or anything.
Yeah, just as a Democrat in Miami County, and then southern half of dark, which makes Miami County it's like Claremont makes Miami County look like Brooklyn.
Troy and stuff.
And got my ass handed to me. There was a cool documentary about it, but got my ass handed to me. But the original plan was I'm going to impress somebody with my campaign, and I'm going to go work for one of these other candidates that wins in Columbus.
Okay.
And try to do something with that. But as you know, the statewide ticket went down. Every single candidate, candidates that were a lot better than me with deep roots in their communities, they all went down in similar fashion. Right. So there I was drinking way too much. I hadn't really gotten to the grisly part of my alcoholism yet, but I was drinking too much and quit my job, and I had been running around Miami and Dark County saying, workers' rights, you need a union.
Okay.
Healthcare, as a member of the radical left. And that's not a guy that they want to
Now, your politics are how left? Like Democratic Socialist left, or?
I would if you what I'm striving for ultimately would be the communist utopia.
Okay.
Of no classes. Everybody has
no such thing as a communist utopia.
There's no such thing as
there's very similar people in the graveyard are in a very similar state.
Well, there's no such thing as a capitalist utopia, and
I agree with that.
China's looking pretty good. There's socialists striving for communism, but
unless you're a Uyghur.
That's where I'm pushing.
Unless you're a Uyghur, you're being forced to have an abortion.
Well, that's secretary. That's state.
Or unless you're being monitored. I've been to China probably 20 times.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to go. I'm gonna go to Mexico City.
We can talk. So I've been I had an employee that studied in China at Beijing University.
Okay.
And so talking about but if you want to be monitored, China's unbelievable. The stuff, the technology, the this, the that, but it's also very China has I don't know if you know this. You just said we just were talking before we started about the new Pope.
Yeah.
China has a fake Catholic Church. It's called the Patriotic Catholic Church. Everything's like a facade and everything's been spied on. So if you come to the Catholic Church and you're Chinese, they allow if you were there and you wanted to go to an evangelical thing, they allow for Westerners to have evangelical church type things in hotels, but you cannot have a Chinese passport and go into those events. Only America passports. Now, if you were just there on vacation, I've been there a lot. I took my son there. It's been a while since I've been there, 8 years maybe. But it's beautiful. It's amazing the stuff they do. The somewhere in between
I think China's up next.
Somewhere between totalitarianism and what we have I think now is a ruined democratic system. That can't solve problems. The key thing is dictatorships can solve problems. Okay, and whether they might not solve them the way you want, but they can solve problems. Okay, they usually end up blowing up in a disaster. But we've gotten to a point where democracies can't solve problems. And you're a left wing, I'm a right wing. But it's funny. I used to have a friend that was I just I guess I still have them. I just haven't talked to them in a long time. They were a huge Bernie Sanders supporter back in the early days. And I was like, most of the things, we believe the same things. The system's rigged. It doesn't work. It can't solve problems. It can't solve the problems that matter to people. We just have a different view of where do we go from here? From how do we get... But would you say that, like, the system is rigged, broken, corrupt?
It is.
Can't solve problems. I would say all the same things.
I think Citizens United was one of the most disastrous decisions ever. And ultimately, that's what I do respect about China, is that they hold capital in check. Capital is subservient to the state. Whereas in America, you've got the Elon Musk.
That's a totally... I'll take you to China someday.
Yeah.
We get rolling in dough from whatever the hell you and I are doing. I'll take you to China. And that's not the truth. What you have in China is you have a class of people that get executive positions in companies based on their political loyalties. And those are the people that are buying houses in the United States. Those are the people that are sending their kids to college in the United States. The rest of the people, it's a very, you're inside, outside. Chinese Communist Party, good, bad. I don't want to go like too far into China, but I used to do these workshops with people it was IBM or Samsung, and it was with sales teams. And they told me, like, the Chinese salespeople aren't going to trust you for, like, you're going to have to come here like 3 or 4 times before they even start to trust you. And then one time I had the person at the end come up to me and go like, hey, and I talked to this guy a couple times, like, what do you think of our government? And then I told somebody, I'm like, I don't know. And then I told somebody, an IBM American person, and they're like, you're breaking through with these people. If they're coming up and asking, because they're like, when you get to know them, they'll start talking to you about this stuff, but they're afraid of being spied on and monitored wherever they are. Yeah. It's not to go on a tangent. I've been to Russia a lot of times, okay? If you go in a Western hotel in China, the paper they're going to give you, it's a China Daily in English. And it's going to have nothing negative about China. And everything that would be positive, anything that would be positive by the United States, there'd be some jab in it too. Like, United States, good news, United States reduces its murder rate to not as the worst in the world, in Russia, by contrast, you go to a Western hotel, they're going to give you the paper there. It's going to be the Moscow Times, the English paper. It's going to have scathing editorials against Putin in it.
Really?
So the Russia, they're not going to let you, both these places are going to rearrange, but there's a lot more open criticism in Russia. And only if, I don't even know what the lines are you cross in Russia. But in China, you can't cross, any lines. And there's a lot of guys told me a story once. They were in a hotel, a really fancy hotel chain in the Orient is, and I'm probably not allowed to say Orient, but in the Orient is the Shangri-La hotel chain. And these guys were working from a company called Sybase that's owned by SAP in a hotel room, like sitting at a desk working on their computers. And they were talking about how hungry they were and stuff like this. Next thing they know, somebody knocks on the door wanting to know if they want to make a food order. That's China.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but anyway, I don't know you that well. I need to get to know you better, but
yeah.
But it's super interesting.
Spring 2026 is what I'm hoping to go.
Well, let's talk offline.
Okay.
And I can show you. I can tell you things I would go do, not do, what I think are, the most interesting things. And I was always there. The other one with my son, I was always there on business, and I took the. And so, but the guys that I was there with, that one worked for me, and one was employee of IBM. And then we would always have weekends, and we do stuff on the weekends, go to different places and stuff like that. And I'm always been very inquisitive as to asking questions to the limit you can. One of the things that you can do in China is I don't know what it's like now. Okay, I don't know what it's like now. I don't know that I want to go there now. But you'd be walking down the street, and it's like these high school age girls come up and start talking to you, and then they're like wanting to, hey, do you want to come have coffee with us? And it's like, what the hell is this? Okay, and you'd be like, what you learn is that they're doing is most of the time, Thailand's the same way. It's kids that are taking English classes, and they have an assignment to find a native English speaker and get them to sit down and have at a coffee shop and have a long conversation with you.
Okay.
Because it's part of their, but at first you're a Westerner, it's like, this is weird. Like, why is this high school girl coming up to me? But they're having Thailand's really like that. If you go to the temple tourist places, there's kids wearing Catholic girls school, Catholic uniform guys with pants or the plaid skirts that are always coming up to you wanting to talk. And it's like, this is weird as hell. What are these kids doing here? And it's because they've been given assignments to find a native English speaker and have a conversation with them.
Okay.
So
that's good to know. I have a.
So you got Jenna Powell. Somebody told me once, Jenna Powell. I asked, what do you think of Jenna Powell? Because very telegenic, very, conservative, facade. A lot of these conservatives are facades. And somebody told me, a politician, I won't know the name, said their view of Jenna Powell, this was an ex-rep, was that she was the next Gene Schmidt in training.
Yeah, I mean, when I lost to her, people thought that she could be a governor one day. I mean, she was the youngest member of the state legislature.
Yeah, well, telegenic woman, Republican, conservative.
One voter, I was talking to one Republican voter out in Miami County when I was canvassing like an idiot, and he said, well, you got to admit, she looks a lot better on a billboard than you do. I was like, yeah. I've heard she might run for Senate.
Why did she drop out? Why did she quit?
Because, we exposed her for living 75 miles outside the district, and I think that was going to be a big issue. And she basically, what I heard from Steve Huffman and I have a friendly relationship because he was the state Senate candidate when I ran, and we had some battles. But he said the quote that he heard was that Jenna told her anti-abortion holy roller crowd in Dark County that Miami County isn't smart enough to select somebody, a true believer. And so she arranged for Pastor John Newman, who had endorsed, he had endorsed her. He had testified in Columbus on her behalf. 5 minutes before the deadline filing, he strolls into the Board of Elections, files as a candidate, goes around Miami County, tells the Troy City Council, I know I'm going to have to raise some money and it's going to be an uphill battle, and acting like it was going to be an honest contest.
Yeah.
Then Jenna drops out and basically gives him her chosen successor for the next 8 years.
I ran into her on, I don't know that it matters. I'm probably Ohio's most outspoken critic of baby boxes. And
you don't like the baby boxes at the fire department?
No.
What's your beef with?
Well, first off, safe haven, turning a baby in at a police station, fire station, or hospital within 30 days, blah, 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 blah. That's been in the law for over 20 years.
Okay.
So these baby boxes is a person in Indiana trying to exploit all that for money. So the baby boxes are $15,000 a box and an ongoing contract. They almost never be used.
I was going to say, it doesn't seem like.
And it's very much like all the people who have been into safe haven, there's a whole group of people that have been into safe haven forever, okay? They all, to be honest, if you're somebody considering safe haven, don't listen to what I'm going to say here. They see safe haven as an opportunity to get young women to come forward, and then they want to help them obviously they're pro-life. They're very pro-life people. And they don't really want the woman to safe haven their baby ultimately. They want to figure out how to help her to be able to be a mother or to do an open adoption of the baby, because I don't know if in adoption, I'll come back to the boxes, people that are adopted have a much higher suicide rate and part of it is because no matter how good your family is, you have a mental thing of why am I? Yeah. So people are into adoption are very much against closed adoption, which is the way it used to be, which you didn't know. And they're all everybody would want to do it now as open adoption. Okay. Mm-hmm. These boxes, because there's no human contact, they put the baby into a legal state in which there's no rights. So it basically creates a free and clear baby you can do whatever you want with. Mm-hmm. So it's first off, I'll give you an example of how reprehensible the woman is that does them, is she won't allow signage at baby boxes for local resources. Think about that. She used to not. Most places she doesn't.
And this is in Indiana.
She's based in Indiana.
Okay.
In Claremont County, I got this changed, but because we only have one of these things, is the materials. There's a little packet of materials. Those were inside the box. So only when you open the door, which activated an alarm and lights, in the thing, could you get access to the materials. And I'm like, don't you think a person would come up and maybe want to take them, go home? They're pregnant for 9 months. They're having this crisis for 9 months. It's not like it all of a sudden. And that was another sticking point. She wouldn't allow any. There's an Ohio form. If you were a fireman and I was a woman and I want to give you a baby, you have a form that's voluntary and anonymous. There's an Ohio form that's a medical profile, an anonymous medical profile, like does your family have a history of cancer? Do you have this? Are you on drugs? It's all supposed to be anonymous. Are you on drugs? Are you this? Does the baby have this? And she wouldn't allow that form to be part of the boxes. Now that got legally required in Ohio, but what it is you being a left-wing guy, I'm a right-wing guy, I'm very pro-life. You're probably not pro-life the way.
I'm pro-life in a different way.
Okay, but the point is, this is exploitation, and a lot of the reasons why these people that have been into safe haven hate these things is because it continues to stigmatize unplanned pregnancy. And they believe in a world in which what we got to do, and these are pro-lifers, is destigmatize this topic. And the first thing and most important thing is that when a young woman is pregnant, that she gets proper prenatal care and she has a proper medical delivery. Because a lot of mothers die, So what
having an abortion is safer than
what happened in not for the baby. So what happened in her situation, she actually encourages, if you dug into video on my page, she actually encourages people to not even go to a hospital to have their baby. Because if you go to a hospital, it's going to create a record of who you are. And you want to be anonymous and be able to surrender your baby with nobody ever knowing where it came from, which is reprehensible. Everybody, as a woman, are there going to be women that have their baby in the car, in the dorm room, whatever? Yeah, it's going to happen, right? But isn't it logical that society as a whole should be about, if you have an unplanned pregnancy, most important things: get proper prenatal care, get proper medical delivery, know what your options are for help. Now, I'm not going to get into, you probably want to abort, but help, we have what's the name of the program in Ohio? There's a program in Ohio to financially help women with unplanned pregnancies. It's called, I just can't remember the name of it, but Monica Kelsey, who runs this company, wouldn't allow the phone number of the Ohio helpline to be on the signs where her baby boxes are in Ohio. So that tells me a person that's not about helping people. That tells me a person that's about monetizing. And you're never going to see the baby box company. I don't know if you knew.
I just figured it was just local government.
I didn't.
Because they're like fire departments, right?
The baby box company, I don't know if you knew that for over 20 years you could surrender a baby at a fire station. You can surrender it to any peace officer. Okay, there's limits, it's supposed to be under a certain days old. Like you can't take your teenager and drop them off at the fire station.
Done that.
Drop them off at the fire station. But my point is, it's very exploitative, and it's to make money. And these right-wing politicians, I know your buds that are left-wing politicians are not going to be into it ever, but these right-wing politicians, it's just a bullshit photo op. That they're standing in a box, cutting the ribbon, they care about moms and babies. Well, if they cared about moms and babies, I'm going to try to remember I kept trying to remember the name of that Ohio program, but then they'd care about having the number on the building so a woman could call the number and learn how she can get financial assistance. Most of the safe haven people, you may or may not like this, but it's very logical. They're on the view of a lot of women have unplanned pregnancies. There's a lot of them that get wigged out mentally, because I'm men, so we do. But I guess pregnancy causes you to have imbalances in your hormones and stuff like this, and you go through different periods in the pregnancy. But they get all wigged out. They feel alone. They feel trapped. But a lot of them, when they give up a baby, 30% of all babies that are surrendered through safe haven, the parent comes back for. Because what happens is some girl gets all wigged out, gives her baby up at a fire station, goes home. No, it could happen, right? But no woman has a pregnancy without anybody knowing. It's. You hear these crazy tales of somebody was pregnant, never know, baby pops out, but they've told a friend, they've told her this, they've told her that, and so what I've researched is what happens is the people find out that when they've given up the baby, and when mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle find out about it, that whereas the girl might have thought they were going to get hate, disrespect, horror, whatever from these people, what they get is an outpouring of love. And so that's when they come back and get the baby, because they find out that their family support structure is much less judgmental as they are this is part of our family, and we love, any baby of yours. So I don't mean to go off on a tangent on baby boxes, but Jenna Powell, I got into it with her on baby boxes. And what I found was she's good politician at talking to you like she's listening and giving a rat's ass what you're saying. But in her mind, everything was about what's going to be good for Jenna.
Yeah. Well, and Jenna's probably she just came down here to say no a bunch, which is fine. It's a good way to campaign in those circles. But I mean, in government and stuff, you need allies. And then of course, she got caught living down in Mason with her realtor husband, and that was the end of her.
I went to her house in Mason.
Yeah.
I went to the house and asked the neighbors, had they seen her there? I went to a couple neighbors. I'm just this reporter thing is good. That's what I do, okay? Because what would you do if you're investigating this? Do I also know that when you do this, when you go knock on some doors around the house saying, have you seen her around here? Have you seen her around here? That this starts to put a little retrospection on the whole thing if you're Jenna Powell.
Yeah.
That there's people could come and see this. You're not, and I just don't get people that are, I don't know about you, JD, right? DJ.
Rooster's
I don't know about you, Rooster, is that, but it's just so much easier living honest. Like when you start hiding stuff and living out of your district, it just makes life too much drama.
Yeah, and the thing about it, she was not only that, but then she was on Instagram and stuff and trying to pass off these pictures of her in Dark County.
The house she supposedly lived in was bullshit. She lives in this house.
Yeah,
it was like her mom's house. It was some relative's house, wasn't it?
Yeah, her family
had
has
been,
a
or
bunch
she
of
inherited
property. And even when she ran, even when she was running, she lived with her parents. She had never lived outside. And if you went to, the house that was listed as like her residency or whatever, she co-owned with her sister, and then you drove by it, and there's not even a mailbox.
Well, how did you? We kind of gone a lot of stuff, okay?
Yeah.
And how did you get we kind of started with how did you become the Rooster? And you started with the ran against Jenna Powell.
Ran against Jenna Powell, and then so I quit. I was drinking too much, didn't have any prospects. I was like, what can I do? And I was like, I had a social media following from working and covering Ohio State football, running my election, and Substack came along, and it was a newsletter. And I was basically like, okay, I'll just start that. And the original idea, I had a blog called The Rooster in high school. Before there was blogs, got in some trouble with that. But I was trying to think of a name, and my ex-girlfriend at the time, or my girlfriend at the time, was like, why don't you call it The Rooster? And I wanted to publish early in the morning, and it just kind of fit, daily publishing 5 days a week. And it was originally supposed to be sports, culture, with some politics mixed in. But the political stuff, the political people overran my list, and you just looked at the data, the political pieces always did better, and I'm a political person, and it just kind of became this political thing. For the first couple of years, it was just it was enough to pay some bills. And I really wasn't getting rich on it. I tried to work. I was
And who was funding it?
100% reader supported.
Okay.
It's
like a Substack, I don't know how any of that works, a Patreon, Substack type thing.
Yeah, so there's a free tier, and then there's paid subscription.
Okay.
And like I said, tell people you don't need you don't need millions of followers.
When people do you on Substack like that, is it visible who's paying you?
I don't know. It's not visible. You can see it. I have the verified badge, so you can see the amount of subscribers I have.
Okay. Just for the stuff I do, I've found that there's people that are sensitive to.
Yeah,
they might want to fund the work, but they don't want to. They're afraid of political implications of them. So.
I would just say this: among my subscribers, it would surprise a lot of some people, but the maximum you could give me is $75 a year. Some people. Random people will send me tips and stuff, but you only need, I tell people, you only need 1,000 people a year to give you $100 a year. I mean, you're not going to get rich. I'm not getting paid in bricks of gold, but I'll clear.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And
how much you were about to say? How much we're going to clear? How much? You don't have to say.
It's one of the big. So people have thought
I've heard rumors. I told DJ.
Yeah.
Or the Rooster. I told the Rooster that I don't really follow him that close. I'm going to start following you closer, but I have friends that constantly, they'll send me something of yours, and there's always a lot of speculation is that certain politicians are paying for you.
So, I've dealt with that. Originally, they thought I was homeless. That was because I bike and I dress like this. I guess I was coming up there sweaty. I was smoking weed really early in the days. Quit that.
Medical?
Yeah, actually. And they tried to toss me out of the state house for smelling about that's a whole other story. But I was talking with a Republican one night, and I was like, "Yeah, I gotta get, gotta get off here. I'm going to lay in bed, but I gotta go." bed with my wife and the husband. I call her Hilltop husband. And they're like, "You have a wife?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You have a house?" And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Why does everybody think you're homeless?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he was like, "Everybody think like the rumor was that I was just this like vagrant who I guess lived under a bridge and would blog from." Would take like public showers and then like would blog from the library, and I guess just had a passion for state politics. That was a big rumor for a while. Then it was Sarah Carruthers was funding me. I consider Sarah Carruthers a friend. Definitely not. I mean, I wouldn't say no if she wanted.
I don't mean to go in a different crazy direction real quick. Who are your 3 or 4 least favorite people in the Ohio House?
Honestly, my biggest vendetta is Matt Huffman, and
revolving door Matt.
Yeah,
by the way, another thing is use the caucus money in the Senate not for fighting Democrats, but for buying reliable Republican votes in already red districts. That's what it.
Yeah, I have a personal problem with Matt Huffman and just his style of politics, and I don't really have a personal problem with any of this, like politics aside.
Yeah.
But I tell them this too, like if you're in the hallway talking to them, I get along with most of them fine. It's when they get in the rooms together and they start making decisions, and I just really don't respect how the caucus just kowtowed to Huffman coming over, got in line, and they couldn't even nominate they couldn't even nominate Tim Barhorse.
Yeah,
they all just shit down their legs. It's like
I took you off on a tangent. So the rumors that different politicians were funding you. You might take the fifth or something on any of the questions.
And then it was, I've got a trust fund, and I don't need to do I don't need to do this. And I told my wife about this, and I was like, they think I've got a trust fund now. That's the rumor. And she was like, well, if that's true, I'll fucking kill you.
Yeah, give me more money.
And me, it's like, honestly, that's more offensive to me than being homeless, because it's like,
right.
If I have, you think I have all this money and I choose to hang out at the Ohio State House, give me a fucking break, man.
Let's just put any rumors to bed. And I don't follow you that close.
Yeah.
Are you now, and you have 3 options, yes, no, or I don't want to answer.
Okay.
Are you now, or have you ever been funded directly by politicians in any meaningful way, other than your $75 or something like that?
Other than just there's a lot of
you never got any Larry Householder or First Energy, Jack or something like that?
No. I mean, I've had people approach me wanting to kind of infuse, I would say, co-opt. But the thing about that, it's like selling drugs. It's like once you take that money, you're beholden. It's hard to turn it off. And then what happens if the rich person dies, gets bored, doesn't want to do it, takes that away?
Right.
And so now I got dealt into the game with the Derek Marin episode, right? That's how, and I had been blogging for a while, had the leverage, exploited it. I got dealt into the game. So to me, the hard part's over. And now it's just about to keep posting with traditional media kind of going.
So how did you
out?
What motivated you from your sports blog, your sports, this kind of stuff, into now you're the number one guy to catch somebody in the hallway and ask them a question they don't want to answer? And by the way, they know you're going to ask them a question they don't want to answer. I love your video. I have had to learn how to pick out Frank LaRose from only seeing his back, because he seems to mostly be running away from people.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about me, I think I've proven now, I mean, if you want to go that route, it definitely helps really early. If you want to run like a bug, that's fine. But that's the basis of the video, right?
You're basically creating you.
No matter who you are, no matter what your political beliefs are, any American understands, as long as I'm not F you, you son of a bitch, fuck your mother.
This is what it's supposed to be.
If you're just asking questions and they're running, you look inherently
So what do
guilty.
you think of, now you're left-wing guy, I'm right-wing guy, what do you think of the press that covers the Capitol? What's it called, the Capitol Journal, Gonger or whatever?
There's Gong Wars.
What do you think of them? Do you think they're do a good job, or they're basically shills for?
No, I think I have a lot of when I arrived on the scene, I talked a lot of shit about the traditional press, which I honestly kind of regret. I've gotten to know a lot of people in the traditional press.
Okay.
Now, it's like, with those guys, it's like everywhere else. There's some people that think I'm a clown. There's some people that respect what I do. I think that the reporter, I don't have a problem with any reporter up there. I think they are hard.
I don't think, who's a reporter? Like I just did probably 40-minute interview with Adam Bird. I did like a 30-minute interview with Richter. I don't know who are the reporters that could do a good 30-minute interview with somebody like that.
Well, I think a lot. I mean, Morgan Trow, she does a lot of that stuff.
Where they're asking not hard-hitting questions to the point of alienating, but probing questions that make them have to think.
So that's where my criticism of the current situation comes in.
Okay.
And it's like what I've leveraged is because it started because there's nobody up there doing video. It's a public park. Like I heard about my friend, my drinking buddy on the patio on Sullivan Avenue. We were smoking cigarettes, and he's like, have you heard about First Amendment audits?
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, I've worked at the post office. I've worked, the police already have it. Probably, I'm not trying to harass working people.
Right.
But at the State House, it's a park. Like if we're having this conversation at the State House, somebody could come up with their own camera and sit there and film it. And so I think the biggest problem with the State House, the media sphere, and this isn't with the individual reporters, it's with their bosses that freak out. The editor class. It's like if you go to Congress and something happens and they don't want to talk, then okay, that's fine. You have a right not to talk, but you're gonna walk the plank.
Yeah.
You're gonna have people hounding you.
Right.
You're gonna look
going
guilty.
down and getting on the little subway train.
At the State House, if they don't want to talk, they don't. Like, it's just like, okay, so if you get caught, lying about an MIT degree, if you get if caught living 75 miles outside your district, if you're Phil Plummer and you take a $20,000 raise through the transportation budget, and you don't want to talk about it, you never have to. And I've talked with some reporters, and they say, well, we did our job, it's no comment, it's still just as embarrassing for them. But unfortunately, I'm a written word guy myself, but unfortunately, we're in a video world, and video just travels further. It's more meaningful. You can't deny the tape. It's bipartisan as long as you're not trying to edit it, catch people out of context, which I don't do. And
it's amazing you've probably been accused of that. It's amazing. I get accused. I'm just really starting to exploit doing more video stuff where I try to get people. But it's amazing how the political class will accuse you of somehow you faked it, you manipulated it, you did this, which I've never done, even remotely like that.
I don't.
It would frankly be too hard to do.
Yeah, I don't manipulate. I don't do any of that. You probably could, but that's why I always post the entire unedited video. And I'm learning too. You got to keep the camera rolling.
I've learned. By the way, I've learned that is keep it rolling at all times.
Yeah, keep it rolling.
It's easier to throw it in an editing program and take a bunch of stuff out.
Keep it rolling.
There was a guy up here after the election commission meeting, because I was here for the election commission meeting, and one of the commissioners up here, I had the microphone on like here, and it's blue, like a big lights on it. He talks to me. The camera was over there. He talks to me for about 15 minutes, and then he's like, "This is all off the record, isn't it?" And I'll respect that for him. But that's the other thing I don't like too is why would you talk to me? I understand if it's some deep dark secret. What scares me, you got somebody who's afraid of something that's not a particular controversial thing they're saying. Oh, it's off. It's like they're telling you, like, by the way, I saw this guy off the record. I saw Matt Huffman killed a guy and did that. It's like they just basic opinion stuff. They're afraid of having an opinion that doesn't please the ruling class that appointed them to their pissant OEC job.
They're inherently cowards when it comes to the job. And so, and like they'll say, I love when they do that, and they're like, well, this is off record, right? And it's like, well, I didn't agree to that. And if, I don't burn sources.
Well,
because you can't get anywhere in this business doing that.
Well, but it's not worth it.
Yeah, I have had people come to me, say something, and then they try to get me to retract it, and it's like, well, like next time.
If it was worth it, you'd put it. My point is, you have to pick. It's got to be something so scintillating that it's really worth it to betray that confidence.
Exactly. And so up there, it's just I had somebody up there today. Like they said that they respected how I've just made these people I forced them to know about my entire shtick. And that's the other thing about the State House. anyone can do that. Like, you don't need to show an ID to go up there. You don't need a reason. If you're homeless, if you're down and out and it's raining outside, you can go into the State House and just hang out.
So I think have probably, and you might not view yourself this way, but I think I have on the right wing side an insurgent mentality, and you probably have an insurgent mentality in that. And what do I mean by that is that I know I'm in losing battles a lot of the time, okay? Which means I have to decide, I need to be nimble, like where I'm going to go, like on an election commission thing on this. I can't plan 5, I don't have the army that I'm planning the battle to. I'm going to make pivots and adjustments based on what is going down. And so, and you're poking, and again, I don't know whether I watch more of your stuff than probably 90% of Ohioans.
The only reason I watch all my stuff is because I'm
you're poke, and I saw your thing. Like you benefited from DEI, now you don't want DEI.
Yeah.
And these kind of things. What's your philosophy though? Like, and maybe it's in your stuff, and I haven't seen it. Like, what is it you're trying to change? Now, at one level, just alone, the exposing hypocrisy, that's all noble in and of itself. And accountability to actions, accountability to history. But do you have an overriding philosophy of what you're trying to achieve?
The goal of the President Xi Jinping's Patriots Caucus is just to put psychic damage on our enemies and make them feel a sliver of the pain they have caused on us. But the overarching message is that we're led by clowns. Like, by and large, I'm not saying like every state legislator is a clown. That's been another thing going on.
But most everyone is.
A lot of them, especially when they just get into the rooms, and on the state level,
they don't think things through.
It's just at the state level, it's just driven. The speaker runs the roost,
right?
The Senate president runs the roost, and you just have a bunch of guys that are just willing to just take orders.
Whatever.
A third of the Republican caucus is up there just cashing checks. Like, they don't give a damn. Like, they take their orders, they cash their checks, they cash their pension, they go home. And so the overarching message on the state level is like, you talk to political people and stuff, and they have all this focus is on Washington because they watch TV, and it's like, oh, who's the president, like Congress, and and it's like, well, let me tell you something. Like, on the state level, it actually probably affects your life day to day. There's so much more,
and the local level.
These guys are so much more accessible, and if you sit outside Kroger's right now, it's like, and that polled everybody that came in.
They don't know.
Who's your state legislator? Who's this? And I've had so many people just come up to me, and it's like, you have forced me to the cast of characters that are up there, and it's just they exist in such anonymity that's how they like it. You know what I mean? They like going up to the state house.
And you know what I
being
found
called
too is,
representative.
the county I live in, which is all red pretty much, is they avoid interaction with the press. There really isn't any press, but if there were, they avoid interaction. They avoid candidate forums. They avoid debates. And they don't see, you could be left wing, I could be right wing. If we talked about an issue, even if we radically disagree, I'm going to learn something from you. You're going to learn something from me.
Yeah.
And we might get it might help us to find solutions to problems. There was a guy, I'm trying to remember the name of him, a guy, he was in the legislature for a shit long time before there were term limits, as if there were term limits today. They just go. But before there were term limits, let's see if I can remember his name. He just passed away, a Butler County representative, and then he became a trustee. He had to go to prison. When he was a county commissioner, he got involved in some illegal shit.
That doesn't sound like Butler County.
But Butler County?
It's Wild West down there.
Something's in
the water down there.
You mean there was a day when that wasn't going on in Butler County? So anyway, his name might come to me. But I had him speak at, I don't know if you ever heard of Buckeye Boys State. But I had him.
Oh, yeah, Buckeye Boys State.
Yeah,
I've heard of that.
At Miami, they do it. It used to be at Bowling Green forever, and then they moved it to Miami
too, right?
Yes, and that's at what college? There's another college where they have girls' state, but they had. But anyway, so I had him speak because I had somebody who I would consult with them to get speakers for the legislative section of this, and I got somebody who's been very successful. I got somebody who had lost, and I got somebody who went to prison. Because I thought these boys need to hear shit like this. They need to hear, keep your nose clean, don't do what I did. But he was telling me, this is the point to hear about how the legislature works. Before this building that we're sitting in, the Rife building, that they had bullpens where all the reps had just desks and huge open rooms. And there'd be a Democrat, Republican, this. And he's like, when you had that, you talk to each other, you get to know each other, you go to lunch, you need to get a coffee. And he's like, we were unbelievably more effective legislating. When they built this building and you have Republican floors and Democrat floors, they don't have any discussions.
Yeah.
They're probably on both sides. They're probably told how to vote on everything.
Term limits have been a disaster too.
Because it's you know what I said, the best thing is there's no term limits on lobbyists.
Yeah.
And so what it is lobbyists just control everything even more.
And lobbyists used to be a dirty word to me too. And don't make no mistake, there are a lot of shitbag lobbyists up at the Capitol, but at the same time, it's a needed class, because honestly, the last thing we want, like, if you're a legislator, especially, it's technically a part-time job.
Yeah.
You can't have expertise on everything that you're legislating upon.
Yeah.
So we do need the lobbyists, like we need the experts.
Well, and the legislative aides are like young kids.
Yeah, and the legislative aides are,
people.
You know, and especially on the Republican side, I just think these guys get used like human furniture. Like, I'm not sure there is like a more miserable existence than being a Republican aide.
So you're basically, your overriding goal is just to keep the heat on these people.
It's to keep the heat on these people, and I go after on the city level too.
Okay.
We exposed to the Tierra Ross.
You
city
live in
council
Columbus
candidate.
City?
I live in Columbus City.
Okay.
I would hang out, and I've complained to city council members about this. And it's probably why I don't change. People are like, why don't you hang out at City Hall? Like the State House is more transparent than City Hall, because in Columbus you have to go there, you have to show ID. Which they store on a computer, and it got hacked. And for 20 years, they got everybody's information for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But you have, like, why are you here? You have to have an appointment. If you go to city council meetings, they have a private garage that they can come into, private stairwell.
Oh, I get you.
They can appear.
So here you can chase somebody in the garage under the.
And they can appear behind a podium, and unless they step off their wizard podium into the public area, you can't get them on camera.
Don't you hate that? Don't you hate the politicians behind the wizard
Yes.
podium, where you're allowed as a lowly citizen to maybe speak for 3 minutes from a lectern like the one behind the camera, but you can never really interact. You can never really, and they're afraid to step down from that podium.
3 minutes, you can do a lot. 3 minutes, you can do a lot in 3 minutes. But then if you show up every week, and there's 3 mintes every week, then it's easy to look like a crank. And I already look like a crank.
I love cranks. Do you speak at committee hearings, or more just
on committee at the State House? I have once or twice. I haven't in a while. It's a plot. It's a place you got to pick your spot. And honestly,
who's your favorite rep? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My favorite rep.
I was going to say your favorite rep to interact with. You're going to get a good clip out of that.
Jamie Callender.
Okay.
I like Jamie Callender
because they give witty. There's two types of ways you're going to get a good clip. They have witty comebacks, or they look like an idiot.
Yeah, well, I think I've said, like, I have to constantly evolve, right? And so if it's the same type of stuff every time, like the viral stuff, me being the clown, it does well. Like, it does well on social media, but that's not like the news.
What's the longest interview you do with somebody?
I've sat down. I mean, I sat down with Gene Krebs, and I've done like
this, like a long time.
Yeah, like a long form.
Okay.
And that's something like this year, this GA, outside of Huffman, I'll clown him every day. But this GA, it's more, I want to prove to people, like, I will stand and have a conversation with you, no matter who you are. And it goes a lot better if you just stand and answer George Clooney's questions.
Right.
And so,
right.
And even people who like groan when they see me come, like Steve Demetriou. I heard he had a quote one time. He was like, "I can't stand the Rooster, but he's got a phenomenal business model." And interact. I like sneaking up on him, but it just goes better. But up at the State House, it's generally tough because you can't monopolize their time. Like at a certain point, you're like, okay, I'm a state legislator. Like I can't sit here and bullshit.
What do you spend most of your time on the House side or the Senate?
Most of the House on the House side.
Because the Senate is harder to get to, or more?
No, the Senate's accessible. It's just you have to. I'm only one guy, and it's.
Do you go around in this? Because the Senate offices are over in the Capitol, aren't they? Mostly.
The Senate offices are in the State House.
Yeah. Okay.
And in the wing.
What about the governor? What about the governor, the auditor, these people? The governor. You go after. I see LaRose. I guess if one of them's at the State House, you're going to chase him down the hallway.
Yeah, I missed Yost yesterday. I would have asked him about that.
By the way, when it comes to clown politicians on the Republican side, I don't know who would you rank higher as a clown than Dave Yost?
Frank LaRose. Frank LaRose is probably the biggest clown going, which is why he's running for auditor. Yost or Strudel.
He's going to do it, and he's going to do the Elon Musk Doge if he's auditor.
Yeah.
By the way,
I don't have a problem. Like,
I'm an element of Republicans that fucking hate these people. Like the revolving door clown show of
they fear the base much more than the Democrats do. I'll give them that much. Because at least the base, and I've said this before. I mean, at least Trump voters and stuff. At least they know they're supposed to be angry.
There's always been. I don't know, and you can come to Claremont County with me. But there's always a pretty good element of grassroots conservatives that are against, and they get played and ruled all the time. They get played. I'm sure on the Democrat side, I'm not making judgment calls, but it might be a little easier to roll some Democrat people that are good. You've got this element of Republicans that are reading the.
Speaking about the Convention of States, the Republican, and then I think he's going to be testifying on term limits.
I'm against that, by the way. So, okay, we lost the camera for a little bit there because we've been talking too long, but we got it rolling again. We were talking about Dave Yost, Frank LaRose. I don't know what got cut off, but Frank LaRose is, in your mind, the biggest clown of the Republicans.
Frank LaRose will say anything to get elected. He was the moderate Kasich guy. Now he's like a Trump warrior. Yost.
Well, he wasn't just the moderate Kasich guy. He was the never Trumper that Trump should drop out.
I mean, there's a tweet, like he was like some farmer did like some like, F Trumper thing with manure, and LaRose tweeted it and was like, it'll never be true.
Oh, I remember that.
Hashtag Kasich country.
You know what's so funny? And you're probably, it sounds like you're a pretty big Trump fan.
No, I mean.
I was joking. I thought you were going to go like, you fucking kidding me? But I think it's so funny these people get caught, I don't know. You and I could have another discussion another time on the distractions on both the right side and the left side, on the crisis, the unbelievable crisis that in reality, while you're being distracted by crap over here, the real bad stuff's happened over here.
Yeah.
And our leaders, I like to say they keep us focused on the shiny objects. So obviously, you and I have different views on abortion and pro-life stuff and things like that, just from our discussion thus far. And we could sit here and we could dwell on that and argue about it, but we're not going to change each other's positions. But there might be 8 other things where we could talk about, where we could come up with better solutions. And these guys, I feel like both Democrats and Republicans like to distract us with shiny object nonsense while they're basically making fools of us in the back room. What's your reaction to that?
I mean, I would say, if you look at, rural Ohio, the bread and butter of the Republican base.
Yeah.
Like, what is the Republican caucus doing for Appalachia? What are they doing for the Claremont counties? They're looting their schools, the infrastructure, and these voters just keep voting. They keep voting for it because the Democratic.
Well, I don't know
Democratic brand.
I think you go, and the problem is all politicians are graded on a very bad curve. And so whether you take urban or rural, I feel like almost none of them nowadays can solve real problems. Yeah. There was you probably would be, I don't know, I'm going to say this name. I'm going to see I'm going to watch your facial reaction. But I had no idea who Andrew Tate was. And then I saw, all this shit about Andrew Tate. And I'm the kind of guy, so I'm going to go watch Andrew Tate stuff. I just want to see for myself what Andrew Tate's about. Yeah. So I heard one thing he was talking about is, because he talks about, and I agree.
He's a sex trafficker,
and
right?
whoever he's accused of things because his political views. But let's go back, because by that standard, Hunter Biden is 100 times more sex trafficker than Andrew Tate.
Well,
but I don't want to get sidetracked. I want to give you this one example. Is he talked about how we have this democratic model. We're supposed to have it because it would be a better way to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
But you go in. I've been to the UAE a lot of times. We're talking about in the UAE, the emir has a weekly meeting, a weekly thing where any citizen can come, and he's at the front of the room, and they can come to the podium and they can talk about some problem they have. Okay, so it could be like there's a big pothole in my neighborhood. Okay, and then the emir looks over and fix a pothole. Okay, and so the problems get solved. Okay, and it's a dictatorship. It might be more of a benevolent-ish dictatorship, but it's one family. There's no elections. There might be some kind of council elections or something, but you get what I'm saying. And so Andrew Tate's bringing up the point of like, so one of the problems you have is if you want to tell people that democracy is the best form of government ever formed, but it can't solve simple problems. Like I have a huge pothole in my street, and it takes a year and a half with your city council to get the pothole fixed, but you can go to the emir or to the Chinese council and they fix it the next day. Then how are we going to convince young people that democracy is the best form of government when it can't solve their everyday problems?
Yeah, that is definitely the ongoing, especially if you look at like Gen Z and how they're trending. But I would, the problem as I see it is just the root of all problems in American society is the wealth inequality. And the very rich have basically corrupted the system, Republicans, and then just neoliberalism.
Like George Soros.
In the cities. George, but if you look at like George Soros compared to like, it's like we use the word like Russian oligarchs. Like Russian oligarchs are like paupers compared to like the wealth, the actual wealth that we have. But yeah, I mean, if you want to tax him out of existence,
I would get your. See, one thing funny about me is, I am a right-wing guy, but I spend most of my time going after Republicans. And why? It's not hard. It's not like I get accused all the time I'm a secret Democrat, It's because I live in a land in Claremont County where it's all Republicans. So the stuff that comes to my attention of corruption is going to be Republican because they're the ones in office. I just like to have the intellectual honesty that whether it's Jeff Bezos, what's his face that I just mentioned, Soros, that we're ending up. One of my favorite people to listen to in podcasts is Jimmy Dore. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, and he's supposed to be a left-wing guy. When I listen to him, he sounds more right-wing than most Republican congressmen. But he gets on these like in-the-middle themes, like Bernie Sanders type things that Bernie Sanders doesn't stand for anymore, of this kind of thing that this oligarchy system we have is, and it doesn't matter whether the rich people are rich Republicans, rich Democrats, they become a uniparty that's basically controlling everything for itself.
Well, especially after Citizens United, like the Democrats have their own billionaires too, and that's why they can't speak to any of the solutions because they're getting funded by the same type of class.
I think,
and my idea, like if you have $1 billion, the government should show up on your door and say, "Congratulations, you've got $1 billion. We're taking half of that. Whatever little scheme you had, whatever business you had, we're nationalizing."
Yeah, I don't agree.
I think if you've got $1 billion, brother, and your first thought is, I'm going back to work tomorrow, that's a sickness. Like, the average American can't comprehend how much $1 billion is. Like, how much do you really need as one person?
But you're not, what you're failing to see, so I don't agree, is that person with $1 billion isn't just sitting on a big pot. Look, come into my room and look at the $1 billion of gold I have here. Those people tend to have, and whether you call it a sickness or whatever, it's a good kind of sickness, is that when they're doing stuff that's creating jobs and opportunity, then that's good. When they're doing stuff that's not creating jobs and opportunity, that's bad.
But government at its best, that's what the taxes are for. Government at its best is the one that should be doling out wealth, and that's why I ultimately back big government, because I look at government as an attorney. That's the only one capable of taking on the Amazons,
look at the difference, and you might not like this
of the billionaire class. It's the only one that can hold these guys in check. Otherwise, we're going to be paying for
there can be radical unfairness. Let me give an example. And Amazon is a good example of radical unfairness. So there was an era in which Jeff Bezos claimed they couldn't charge sales tax because it was too complicated. Right. And so that was a big, if you remember back, that was a big way Amazon got to a top position.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, at the same time, Amazon sold that service to other websites to just charge proper sales and use tax. I don't know if you know this. When he got to number one, then Bezos changed, and now everybody should be charging tax right, because now he knew, I'm number one now, I've got control of the supply chain. If everybody has to charge tax right, all these smaller websites can't do it.
Yeah.
So that is not intellectual honesty. It's dishonest. It's self-serving.
But who is going to hold him in check besides government regulation?
I agree that in that case.
And ultimately, what did he do? His ex-wife, Mackenzie Bezos, wrote his business plan. he ultimately got a $300,000 loan to start from his parents to start it. What if his parents, didn't have $300,000 to loan him on this great idea? Where would he be? Like these guys.
Yeah, but
luck has a lot, and fortune has a lot.
But if I would trust much more that people with entrepreneurial ideas can find funding for those ideas and create jobs and opportunity, then that government's going to do that. And so does that mean it's perfect? Like you said, capitalism's not perfect. This isn't perfect. That's not perfect. I just feel like you need to have that. You need to realize that people with their own money who are entrepreneurial, there's a kind of breed. I can't even understand. Like this is not an entrepreneurial story, but I'll just give you. I like this. You might start laughing at me. I like ABBA music. No, that's not what it is. I like Blink-182 music. Okay, and then like that Tom DeLonge, the head of Blink-182, that went off, and it's like I would listen to the Blink-182 Pandora channel, and I had like the Pandora where you didn't get ads. But it would cut in every now and then and be Tom DeLonge like, thank you for listening to the Blink-182 radio channel. And it's like, at one time, this guy had Blink-182, Boxcar Racer, and Angels in It, 3 bands, and they would have ads on there. He's written 3 science fiction books. Okay? My point is, there's a type of person, maybe you're what, I'm not, that has this DNA that's like, how does he freaking do all this stuff? And so I think that we need people who are risk takers.
Well, what do his parents? What does his Wikipedia look like? Are his parents' names? Are they blue? Do his parents have their own Wikipedia thing? Because that's generally how it goes.
So I don't know about that. Okay. Yeah. So I think but my point is, government is very imperfect, and government tends to corruption. Private sector is very imperfect, but it tends to weed that out over time because because inefficiency gets weeded out. Even Amazon over time, I think a lot of the stuff that's happened with Amazon has been unfair. Okay, they've used the law to protect an oligarch. However, even then, it's going to get weeded out because there's going to be competitors that come on the scene. The problem is that there's a lot of pain in the middle where this guy's controlling everything beforehand.
I say when you have like the Google guy, the Amazon guy, Elon Musk sitting there at the president's inauguration. It's just a bad.
But I think you're. What's so funny to me, and I don't love. I like Elon Musk. Okay, you might not like Elon Musk. Okay, but the funny part about it is so Elon Musk, on a relative scale, as a business person, you can't deny that he puts forward the concept of a free speech advocate, and you and I should be.
I mean, he puts it forward, but
but he bought definitely. Why don't you say? X, it might not be perfect.
It's got
but
worse.
X is more free speech
worse.
now.
Oh
you don't.
My God,
you think X is less free speech now than it was
X
under?
Is junk.
What was the guy's name that had X before?
Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey? Are you kidding me?
It was a town Twitter. I've been posting on Twitter since 2009. Right when you had to send a text message to tweet. I've been in the streets. It was Twitter ultimately was a town square.
But do you think it's less free speech now?
Yes, I mean, use the word cisgender. You're censored. You got. I mean, it's it's just the race that if you don't block, if you don't spend hours blocking and stuff. If you just create a new account, you automatically follow his account. You know what I mean? He's got the more followers than anyone in the world. And it's is he truly the most popular guy? And you're just bombarded with just right wing.
Oh, see, what's so funny?
I understand how you guys.
Maybe when we're done, we'll pull out my phone and look at what I get bombarded with in X, and I don't use X that much. Yeah. I get bombarded with left-wing stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to actually.
What do you consider?
We'll do that.
Left-wing?
Oh, everything is I get Bernie Sanders stuff is all day, all night. He's having a rally. We'll do when we get done here. I'll show you what comes up on my X. And you can see because neither of us know we're all being manipulated by the algorithm. Right?
Oh yeah, well that's why I try to stay off the For You page unless I'm really spending too much time on Twitter. That's how I know when I try to spend it on my followers list because that was the nice thing about Twitter. You could curate it and you could get the multiple sources in real time. I really think the search function's gone away and it used to be just the premier breaking news.
But here's where I was going with that, and I didn't know. You're not agreeing with the notion that it's more free speech now than not. Okay. What floors me is how you don't have more U.S. moneyed interest to me fighting for, because I think the root of all of it, my thing probably more than anything else, is transparent process, and that the root, because I was a consultant for a long time, and what I found is when you have a fair process that is transparent, that allows stakeholders to participate fairly, it's never perfect, but you get a lot better at getting to the better decisions. And when you close that system down and Matt Huffman tells you how to vote, and you never have the real debates, you never have the real discussions. The beauty of our society was supposed to be that we have, by the way, when you go to China, that's a consensus model. Their government, the way their government works is supposed to be a consensus model. We're supposed to have a deliberative model. The point of a deliberative model is you argue, you debate, you piss on each other, and then you finally make a decision, and then you build the bridge, okay? A consensus model is the leader says we should build the bridge the way we should do it, and most people just go like, okay. Then they build the bridge, then the bridge collapses because there was not that debate. And I feel like today, I don't care whether it's left, right, rank and file people, we've lost the ability as a society to have a legitimate back and forth debate on something where everybody at the table is actually trying to get to a better solution. It's all parochial. You see these state reps. I'm interested in your thought on this. You see them, not every day, but you do your thing, okay? And it's like, how many of them are actually working on, I want to come up with the best solution?
Probably about like 20%.
Right. The rest of them can't even comprehend the best solution.
No, and some of them they're just like, Ron Ferguson, for example, who I have a respect for Ron Ferguson. He knows how to hate, but they're just trying to burn everything down. Like people, they just get into government to burn everything down.
Don't you think that can happen on both sides?
It could, and I criticize the Republicans on the state level. I would if Ohio suddenly became Democratic and it was a Democratic legislature, Democratic supermajority. If I lived in California, I would be behaving the same way. Because but at least we'd be funding our.
It's
schools.
Not healthy though. What's not healthy is that you can't. All citizens, whether you're left wing or right wing, the expectation on our political class should be that you come up together with better solutions.
Yeah, well, I would say that I would say ultimately the gerrymandered nature of our legislature goes against gerrymandering and term limits are kind of the two of the three, 4 horses of the apocalypse or whatever. I think if issue 1 would have passed, it never would have been a Democratic legislature. It wouldn't have been a supermajority. It probably would have been about 45 Democrats, 55 Republicans right there, which is kind of like there's more incentive.
Well, it's amazing. You probably know this. How few competitive races there are in Ohio.
Yeah, and now there's...
Because everything... And I don't know, part of it is, I do believe the notion it's not... I'm not going to say there's not gerrymandering, because there is, okay? But part of it is just, like the Senate district I live in is all red, okay? So there's not going to be a competitive race.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And it's not because of gerrymandering, it's just because the people here are all red, and they're not...
Yeah,
you couldn't draw a district to make a competitive race.
Ohio, I would say, Ohio's a Republican state. I would concede that, especially with how our elections have gone. But it's not, as we saw with the abortion amendment, as we saw with weed, it's not a 65... 65. It's not a super majority of Republican state. We're not Wyoming. We're not.
What's
South
funny is
Dakota.
we have a place in Florida. It's not either. I get in Florida. People from here might have a view. Florida. We actually had a bigger supermajority in the Ohio House than the Republicans in Florida had in their House.
That's surprising.
The
Republicans are rolling.
And go look at go look at the election returns from the last election. I think Florida had a higher percent Trump than Ohio, but not by much. They're because at least Florida, the front guard of the Republicans in Florida are all more MAGA type people, whereas in Ohio they're all more Rhino type people, and that might have to fake like they're MAGA when they need to because Trump's in town. But it's I just feel like it's so. I think the one thing, and the citizens need to look for. That our elected people forget about policy views. It's just like, here's problems. What are solutions? Like right now, I get upset on this. Like Vivek and everybody's going to get rid of every tax. We're going to get rid of sales tax. We're going to get property tax. Okay, first off, it ain't going to happen. And Second off,
they might get rid of the income. They might.
What's your solution? What's the solution? Okay, so we've been talking for a long time, and you're, I've learned a little bit about you and what you're doing, and so what else do you want to hit on?
Who you got in your crosshairs on the Board of Elections?
On here, yeah. OEC. The whole thing, I don't, they're trying to get rid of it.
Brian Stewart got off the hook.
They're trying to get rid of it. Well, Brian Stewart, I got an appeal. Okay. So Brian Stewart's one of the most arrogant people I've ever seen. Frankly, the ones that and it's like, how do you get to the point? The funny part was when I first fingered that he had done something wrong on his campaign finance, which he did, okay, and they let him off. Okay?
It did seem
absolutely wrong, okay? Yeah. He was the voiceover at the end of a radio ad that he said he knew nothing about.
Yeah.
Okay, and was never
Ohio politics.
Was never on his campaign finance report. But had he come into the election commission with some humility, made a mistake, got it fixed, no problem. Because, by the way, when somebody files against you for the election commission, it's probably going to be 2 to 6 months before you ever have your preliminary review.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of time to ponder. If you come in here to this election commission and you have fixed it, they're always going to let you off, right? They're going to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I fixed it. You might get a $25 fine or something. Yeah, it was a mistake. But he comes in here like a little Napoleon prick. I can do no wrong. I have no introspection whatsoever. And I'm just sitting there, and I have to deal with some people. I had Alan Freeman, who you wouldn't know because he never got elected. But, Gene Schmidt is my state rep.
Yeah, I like the old mean Gene.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was our original link up with the corn elder, her former aide.
The abortion guy.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, too, is the abortion. I love these, I would joke with people, Rooster, that there's a Republican class of which Gene Schmidt is a part of that talk about pro-life all the time, but they want abortion legal. Why? They raise a lot of money off that issue.
They do.
And so they're against abortion.
I like Mean Gene. I
don't.
Because I busted her up, and then her husband passed. I didn't feel right about chasing a widow around, and I sent my condolences to her. And ever since that, the iron wall fell between us, and
do you know what Gene was doing?
Gene and I get along fine. Stuart and I had our battles, and
her husband's wake was on a Friday. Do you know what Gene was doing on Monday? Fundraising calls. Somebody who she called asked her, "How can you possibly do fundraising calls?" And she said, "With my husband just dying, it's a good time to fundraise."
I mean, that's...
You talk about somebody who is about themselves, and that is Gene Schmidt. And she will play up. When she was before the election commission on me...
She's got some wiggle to her game.
She came to the election commission. It's like all the sob story. This was probably like, I don't know, like 3 months, 4 or 5, at least 3 months maybe. I don't want to get the date wrong. But some time had passed,
Okay.
But she's got the story. She's got a new dog, telling all these stories about her new dog and how she's not home, and it's like all this bullshit where I'm like, this is ultimately about, did you file a complete and accurate campaign finance report or not? And she didn't. But these politicians play this stuff. And what's so funny, probably Democrats the same way, Republicans will be like, like they have a black and white view. Like you either did or you didn't do it. But when it comes to them, I got a new dog. The dog's sick. My husband died. All this kind of stuff. One thing I'll tell you about that case, which is so crazy, she maintained that her finance report was right because she had called Brian Katz, who's like a top lieutenant at LaRose, director of election integrity. Okay. And she had called Brian Katz on a Saturday. And he gave her advice about filing on the report. So then I'm like, hold on a second. If I call the Secretary of State's office, they're going to tell me they can't give legal advice. But you have access to Brian Katz on a Saturday, and he's telling you how to report something on your campaign finance report. I try to call Brian Katz as a witness then. They won't let me. Because they protect LaRose, and they protect the crooked operation.
Yeah, I was surprised Christina Hagan sits on the board.
So Steve Caraway, Stephen Caraway.
Do they give what's the salary? I mean,
it's not that much. I want to say it's like 25, 26 or something.
That's easy enough for
me. But Stephen Caraway, who was sitting down at the far end today, he was Householder's top lieutenant for south of I-70. He never got charged with anything, never got any repercussions. DeWine promotes him to the election commission. This just tells you everything you need to know about Ohio. The guy who was the lieutenant that ran Larry Householder's operation for the, and I don't know if you know this, but all of the people who were Householder's top lieutenants, Megan Fitzmartin, Tommy Rolfe, I don't know if you know some of these names.
I know Fitzmartin.
They all got promoted.
Yeah.
Fitzmartin became policy advisor to Stevens.
Yeah.
Okay? The only
I like Fitzmartin.
Anna Lippincott left the country.
Yeah, and she moved to The Hague. I like that part. It's like, if I were her, I would have just been like, because I understood her fiance got a job or something.
That's why she moved?
Can we move, like,
I'm going to work
literally
under the
anywhere else
assumption, flee in the
besides
feds. Flee in the feds.
She's back in Ohio.
Well, I got to, we got to find out where she is, because she's never been available for a witness in an Ohio election.
I heard that through the grapevine. I've been in this in the basement of Vern Rife, and I hope you're listening to this, that Neil Clark, she tasked some people after Neil Clark died by suicide in Florida. She tasked some henchmen. Neil Clark had a store, some sort of storage
retrieve
down
stuff?
here, go retrieve stuff and basically burn and shred it before the FBI could really dig into it.
I went in Florida where Larry Householder. Remember the thing where he had a house in Florida?
Yeah, it was his mother's house.
I went to the house.
Yeah.
Okay, now
and I think that's ultimately what did him in, was he took money.
So this house. I'll tell you the story real quick here, and then we go wrap up. I go to the house. I'm like, with my wife, I'm going to go down there. She likes to go to the pool and shit like this at the condos. I'm like, I'm going to go find something to do. I'll go down. I go down to his house, and so I go down the street. I'm driving down the street to this house. There's cop cars everywhere. I'm like, I'm just going to drive by. So then I drive by. I go on the lam a little bit at some chicken wing place. Then I come back half hour later, no cop cars. So then I pulled in the driveway to the house. I went up, they had a Ring doorbell. I rang the Ring doorbell at Larry Householder's house in Florida. And nobody answered, nothing happened. I walked around the house. This woman comes out of a house next door. And then she comes over and is talking to me about oh, well, she has the keys to the house. So she takes me on a tour inside Larry Householder's house. There was no furniture.
What'd you tell her? I'm just a family friend.
And I'm filming the whole time. She was a little tipsy, by the way. She was a little tipsy. So then I go.
Was this after his arrest?
Yes. And then she's telling me how the people that have this house, that they owe her a bunch of money because they never had the grass cut. They never did anything.
Yeah.
And so they were paying, the neighbor was paying to get the yard maintained because it was such an eyesore.
Yeah.
And then she's like, just one day, all these people show up and putting a new roof on, doing this, doing a new pool. And that was the
deck.
So I'm filming her the whole time, this thing, and yeah. Well, then I go to leave, and it might have been before this figured out. It's like, when I was here earlier, there was cop cars everywhere. And it's like, so I drove by and I came back. She's like, oh, yeah, they were hauling my husband off for beating me. and I'm like, what? So then she was a little tipsy. And then she's all touching me and stuff like, hey, do you want to come in? And then she's like, she had some cannolis she made or something. And she's like, oh, you have some of my cannolis. Like, you want to come in, And then then out of the house comes 2 college-age kids. And I guess her kids, and they're talking I'm like, this is the weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, then I got her contact information. And then I left, and I contacted her back saying, hey, you were tipsy and I filmed this whole thing are you okay with it? And then there's a little bit of it that I put out a long time ago on Facebook, but most of it I never put out, of going through his house. I put the story, and it wasn't particularly revealing because the house was pretty much empty inside, but I didn't put it out because this woman was.
Was that the footage they had on that the documentary, the HBO documentary?
I don't know. I haven't actually seen
footage inside of it, and I'd never seen the inside of Larry Householder.
I'll have to go see that to see if
he inherited it from his mom.
I did put out that was not with her ever in it, but video of inside the house. But a lot of it I shot had her in it, talking about pointing to stuff and talking about it.
Yeah, there was no one. It was just in the kitchen area and stuff.
So I doubt it. I doubt it. But you get what I'm saying? Any video I had that did not have her in it, I put that out. Okay, but I took out all the video that had her in it. It would have been fucking hysterical to put it out. I could have put it out.
Yeah.
There was nothing illegal about putting it out. And most of the time, I probably would have put it out. But for some reason, I was just at that time.
The delete key is undefeated.
There was so much, on it, and I thought, does this really serve a purpose of this woman, in there? her husband that was beating her, but it was the screwballest thing ever that I'm driving back and telling my wife, like, I don't know, I think I could have gone into this woman's house and God only knows what will happen next. It was so weird when it happened, but she told stories about nobody ever came there. It was almost, that's the funny thing is that these people, it's like Pablo Escobar had all these mansions, but could never stay in any of them because he's wanted everywhere. So it's like nobody ever came to this house. It didn't even have furniture in it. And
I heard it was kind of dumpy, and then he put some money into it.
Yeah,
got tax liens and stuff, and that was kind of
paid off the tax liens, put on a new roof, etc. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we covered.
This is like a pretty long form interview. So
I'm a yapper, man. I'd sit here all day.
Oh, I like it. I mean, it's get to know you some. So, and I'd like to do the. I don't want to be a part of any of your liberal bullshit that you put, but I am all for exposing hypocrisy on both sides.
Yeah.
And because my mentality is I'm a conservative Republican and I hold. I'm in that get my own house in order kind of category, or get our own house in order.
Well, if you ever want to come to the State House, we could get you and Gene Schmidt to have a boxing match, and we could sell tickets.
No, not going to be boxing match. But
I think Gene, she'd clean me out. Probably 6 rounds, she'd have me on the turkey. She's nimble.
Do you know a story with Gene? We'll close with this. Is Gene and her running stuff all the time? She has a twin sister. Did you know that?
Okay, yeah. I did know that.
There was a person in our neighborhood whose last name was Schmidt. Okay. And so they would run in the Flying Pig Marathon, and Gene Schmidt would always run. And not my neighbor. My neighbor was in that, loved Gene Schmidt. Couldn't wait to see her. But there's a lot of people that didn't. And Gene Schmidt supposedly got almost run over 3 times running, and people swerving to hit her. Not my neighbor. My neighbor would never have said something bad about Gene. But just how everybody, because they ran alphabetically, they all effing hated her. Because she's all about herself. It's just about Gene and how awesome Gene is.
Well, she had that controversy when she was in Congress. She had a picture of herself running a marathon.
Yeah.
And then she had about altered.
Oh, I don't know about that.
The finishing time. And it's if you looked at the time, it would have placed her in it's on her Wikipedia page. It would have placed her in the top 1% of global runners ever. Well, and the reporters saw it and they checked me there's she's obviously in the top of her age, but there's it was would have been damn near a world record.
Right. Well, I appreciate you spending so much time with me, the Rooster, DJ, and I like what you do. Maybe get less of the liberal stuff in there and just expose.
Well, that's what they said. The older you get, you're going to get more conservative. I'll go the other way, but
I think and I'm glad to work with you on anything that involves exposing. Because, like I said, I believe that transparent process, that's going to get us to better decisions. And so
you get the government you deserve ultimately.
Well, and the other thing I hear people say is government is a reflection of the people.
Yeah.
It doesn't lead the people; it reflects the people.
Yeah.
So look at the people in our country. A lot of them tapped out on credit. Don't have and what is the government tapped out on credit? So it's unfortunate, but I think that you and me, people like you and me that are in the whatever quadrant of the goofball chart. It's an important function we're going to need to rely on.
I'm in the normal chart.
We're going to rely on. You're in the goofball chart. We're going to rely on. It's going to take more citizens doing this stuff.
Yeah.
To hold these people accountable, especially in Claremont County, you get to the local level. There's no press.
There's no press.
And
that's a whole nother worm too.
So, all right. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
brother.
rest of the day.
Hope to see you up on Capitol Square soon.
All right.